This episode of Fermented Adventure the Podcast features Evelyn Medina of Mean Mug Coffee Company. This is an inspirational story of Evelyn's journey to create Mean Mug Coffee Company. You will also learn about Raj. It's an innovative syrup that's perfect for baking, craft cocktails, coffee, craft sodas, and more. So be sure to reach out to Evelyn and Mean Mug Coffee Company and let them know what you thought about the podcast. Cheers! Hello, ladies and gentlemen, craft spirit enthusiasts, and those interested in the intoxicating world of craft distilleries, cideries, meaderies, wineries, and the occasional foray into breweries. It's Rich Shane, and welcome to Fermented Adventure, the podcast, where we bring you the fascinating people that are making the mash, fermenting, distilling, bottling, pouring, and delivering to you some of the finest libations in the world. Before we get started, here are a few housekeeping items. Thank you for bringing the podcast into wherever you are and whatever you're doing. We truly are grateful that you have chosen to listen and make us part of your day. It would mean the world to us if you left a 5-star review. This helps us climb in the rankings, and it makes it easier for others to find us. Don't hesitate to leave us your comments as well. If the podcast didn't meet your expectations, tell us why. We're always striving to improve. You can find us at fermentedadventure.com. We are on Instagram and Facebook as Fermented Adventure. Email us at fermentedadventure@gmail.com. All right, FA Nation, let's meet our guest. She's Evelyn Medina. I'm Rich Shane, and this is Fermented Adventure, the podcast. Evelyn, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Evelyn, Mean Mug Coffee Company. We met at the International Food and Coffee Show at the Javits Center in New York. You're from Salisbury, North Carolina. How did Mean Mug Coffee Company get started?
Mean Mug Coffee got started about 8 years ago here in Salisbury, North Carolina. I had moved to North Carolina in 2001, and this is a very small, sleepy kind of U.S. town. And I thought that this town was in the need of a place where people can meet, where people could get to know each other and kind of find community to grow. And I was raised in Los Angeles, which is kind of a melting pot. And when I moved to the South, I realized that the South was not quite the same of a melting pot than I was used to. And I set out to create it, to make it into a melting pot. And so I wanted to start a place where people from all walks of the world can meet up and get together and maybe over coffee kind of break down some of the barriers and some of the myths about, who the Latin community is and who the African American community is, and kind of just get together and get to know each other a little bit better. And I decided that coffee would be the best way to get through it, because although I knew it was going to be the beginning of a business, I didn't want it to be a restaurant, because I didn't want to become a slave to, making food every day. And then I thought, well, how bad can you screw up coffee? It turns out you can. But
I can attest to that. You can screw up coffee.
Yes.
Not me personally, but Dawn and I have had bad coffee, so it can be done.
And so I began on this journey that's now 8 years old of bringing people together in my community through coffee. That's how we got started.
Okay, now you talked about that you didn't want to be a slave by having food. Did you have a background, or did your family or somebody have a background in coffee before you started a coffee shop?
Well, we are from Guatemala, which is a big coffee country. Guatemala produces and exports a great deal of coffee, but no, my family does not have a coffee background. Of course, being from Guatemala, we were fed coffee in our bottles when we were babies. So, have been very acquainted with coffee, but no, I don't come from a restaurant kind of industry or a coffee kind of industry. But now I'm head over heels into the coffee business.
Well, when we went to your booth and we met you and your family, you you had 45 people that were part of your family behind your booth in this little 8x8 spot. I don't know how everybody fit in there, but everybody claimed to be family. And we were really beyond the coffee. The coffee is delicious. Just taken by your story and how you talked a little bit about bringing the community together, but there's more to that what you do in your coffee shop, isn't there?
Well, yes, there is. In our coffee shop, a lot of things have come out of our coffee shop here locally in Salisbury. For example, back I guess in 2015, 2016, I want to say, when the Charleston shootings happened, I was sitting in the coffee shop and I was thinking, there's got to be, a way that we can grieve together as a community. And one of my good friends that came to our coffee shop frequently was there, and she said, "Why don't we hold meetings here at Mean Mug?" And we started a meeting that we called the Peace Circle. And the first Peace Circle we held at Mean Mug brought in over 75 people from our community. We couldn't even fit in my shop, and started talking about how to bring about social justice and how to bring about peace and how to break down barriers to get to know each other as a community a little bit better. Then years later, we brought in kids with disability to come into our shops and volunteer or work or do internships so that they can be more visible in the community, and so that they can also feel like they're part of our community and know that they mean something to our community. And in the process of bringing my community together through coffee, I've learned a lot about coffee, and I've grown this business to where now we're getting ready to open up our 5th store here in North Carolina. And then I started thinking about how I needed to become more familiar with the process of growing coffee. My husband, when we first met, he had bought a significant amount of land in Guatemala that he had intended to use for just animal farms. He's a dairy farmer by trade. And when he met me, then, we got married, we started having kids, and the land kind of sat in Guatemala for a few years. And after we opened up our 2nd store, he said to me, how much money are you spending buying your coffee from roasters, in just independent North Carolina roasters? And when I gave him the number, he said, "Oh my God, Evelyn, that's a lot of money." He said, you know that we own a little half of a mountain just in the right altitude in Guatemala. We probably can start growing our own coffee. And so here we are, 8 years later, growing our own coffee in Guatemala. After we made a few trips to Guatemala, we were able to acquire other farms that were already producing coffee in Guatemala. And so now all our stores here in North Carolina serve coffee that's been grown and exported from our own farms. And, as an immigrant, I came to the United States when I was 7. My husband came to the United States when he was 19, 20, something like that. And we left Guatemala, or our families left Guatemala looking for work, looking for opportunity. And I've got to tell you, when, having 5 stores and running that payroll and realizing that we employ here in North Carolina over 25 people is an incredible satisfaction. But when we started growing our own coffee in Guatemala, when we started running our own farms in Guatemala, and my husband said, "Okay, now we've got payroll in Guatemala," tears rolled out of my eyes, because we had at that point come full circle. Having left the country for lack of opportunity to coming back and creating opportunity for people in Guatemala and teaching them the love for coffee, the love for the industry, working really hard to pay them wages that will help them stay in the country and not have to flee, and risk their lives to come across all those other countries to try and reach the American dream. And that satisfaction is has no price. It's priceless. And that's what drives us now, the fact that I started thinking of starting a business that would help my community here in North Carolina. And 8 years later, not only have we grown our business and the community here in Salisbury, but we've been able to help our community back home in Guatemala. And we are bringing as much product from Guatemala to the States to run our business, to keep it sustainable, and to help people in Guatemala and keep them employed in Guatemala, and working really hard to open more businesses to employ more people here in the United States. And it's been an incredible journey. It's been a lot of work. It's been a lot of tears and a lot of elbow grease, but it's been incredible. And I think one of the biggest amazing things for me is that through all that process, we've been able to teach our children. My children are now 18 and 19 years old. So they were 11 and 12 when we started the business. And through all this journey, we've been able to teach them the importance of community, the importance of family. They've gone to love Guatemala in traveling back and forth to the farms. And it's just, don't get me wrong. There's been a lot of tough days, but overall, the experience and the journey have been incredible. If anybody would have told me 20 years ago, this is where I would be today, I would have I don't know about that. I think I would have been a little bit of a skeptic.
For Dawn and I, we, in our Fermented adventure, we enjoy spirits, we enjoy libations, cocktails, and we are always seeking out a coffee shop. But we love the very independent, very unique coffee shops, exactly in what you describe as Mean Mug. This sense of community, this sense of purpose, this sourcing of now what's growing on your own farm, and as you talked about, employing families and people from your home country. And this is what makes it special for us. The journey for us. And as you were sharing your story, Evelyn, it brought me back to first meeting you and feeling this wonderful energy from you. This almost, I hope what people feel is Evelyn is giving everybody on this podcast or everybody that comes in contact with her a big hug. And it's warming, it's friendly, it's welcoming. And what you do is you say, hey, sit down, let's talk, let's get to know each other, let's have some coffee. And doesn't that break down so many barriers? It breaks down things that we put up in front of us that keep us from getting to know each other, doesn't it?
Exactly. Like I said, Salisbury is a sleepy southern town. And I remember when I moved here in 2001, people would ask me, would look at me, and then I'd engage them and they would say, wow, where did you learn how to speak English? I remember going to get my license at the DMV here and people not understanding how I had a passport if I wasn't born in the United States. How did I have an American passport if I wasn't born here? And it was just because they've never encountered, people like me, or very few people like me had they encountered. And so I thought, no. Like I said, coming from LA, it was a culture shock, to say the least. And I was determined to break that barrier down. And I was determined for people here to learn about my culture, to learn, about what I guess my people, for lack of a better word. And over the years, it's been incredible. There's been a couple of times where the city has allowed me to close the street down, for a block, and I've had salsa dances, and I've had people that had never probably even danced to Latin music out in the middle of the street, just dancing to Latin music. We hold Spanish meetups at Mean Mug, people trying to learn the language and understanding that that learning Spanish or listening, to people speak Spanish is not a threat. It's an incredible gift when you can speak two languages. And, I always tell people, English is the language of business. French is the language of love, but Spanish, that's the word we communicate with God with. So it's a good language to learn. It's a good language to listen to acquire an ear for. And yes, that's what we've done over the course of 8 years, is break down those barriers. And we are probably one of the most inclusive business in our downtown Salisbury area, where you can find people of all walks of life, of all races, not only sitting as customers, but behind the counter as well. I've made it a point to be as inclusive as possible. And, we hire a lot of teenage kids, and I like for them to learn not only how to make a good cup of coffee, but I like them to learn what being inclusive is all about. And even though in coffee shops, you have an incredible turnaround, I've been lucky enough and blessed enough, not to say that I haven't had a huge revolving door, but I do have, kids that have started with me from, 16 years old and have worked with me until they're off to college. And they love the business. They love the business model, and they love coffee. And they think of my business as their own business. They're very loving of my business, and they're very jealous of my business, as in, they make sure that things are ran the way they should, because they believe it to be theirs. And this is true. I always tell them, if our business is successful, we'll all be successful. So,
Evelyn, Mean Mug Coffee Company. How did you come up with the name?
Yeah, that's not as romantic as most people would like to think. Of course, our last name through my husband, through marriage, is Medina. And my husband has a business of his own, which is Medina Construction, he has his own success story on that front. But I didn't want to use our last name. I didn't want to be a Medina Coffee, or, I wanted something different. But I did want something very catchy and something people could remember. And I remember thinking I need to get a creative team behind me. And so I hired a local ad agency. They're called Miller Davis here locally in Salisbury. And I said to them, I want something that people will remember. I want to play on words, which is why Mean Mug, a mean cup of coffee, a mean mug. But I want the name and the logo to somehow come back to who I am as an immigrant from Guatemala. I want that to be present. So they came up with the logo. Here you go, Mean Mug.
It's on your sweatshirt.
On my shirt, yes. And
check out the website.
yeah, meanmugcoffeeco.com. So it's the font is It's a playful font with the words mean mug, for a play on the word, a mean cup of coffee or a mean mug. And then in the middle, you have the Mayan sun, or the Mayan calendar. I'm sorry. The Mayan calendar, which is a circle with the Mayan letters around it, the calendar. And in the middle, they drew a bean, a coffee bean. And if you look at the coffee bean, it's got like Mayan features. So yes, that's the logo. That's the name, Mean Mug Coffee Company.
I love it. Now, like I said, we met at the coffee show. We met at the Javits Center. And what was that experience like for you and your family? What are some of the takeaways that you had from that event?
We've never done a coffee event like this at all. And we were there because we were promoting through our coffee. We met Alex, who owns Raj Syrups in Guatemala. And Alex had been looking for a coffee husk to make a certain syrup drink, cascara, more particularly. And he uses our cascara from one of our coffee varieties to make the cascara syrup. And so he's developed it, and we are distributing it for him here in the United States. And so we were trying to launch the Raj cascara syrup. And so he had said, it's a good idea for us to take it to one of these expos. And since you're my distributor, would you come on board and help me launch this? And so that's why we were there specifically to launch our cascara syrup that's made in Guatemala, manufactured in Guatemala, and it's being sold in the United States. Again, you can order at Mean Mug Coffee Co. There you go. And that's why we were there. And, it was New York, and I was there, and I had taken my lead barista, who's my niece, my beautiful niece, Ashley. And then my kids were off on spring break. And they're like, wait a minute, you're going to New York? We want to come. And so we made it a family event. And since both of my kids are very much involved in my business and working at the shops, it was for them, it was natural to talk about coffee and to talk about the syrup. And, we didn't realize, I don't think initially, that we were kind of like in a world stage there with the biggest coffee expo, and in New York. And when we were giving, the award of the best new consumable product on the expo, we were like surprised, taken aback, like incredibly, I guess, honored in a way, but shocked that that a tiny little company like Mean Mug Coffee Co. and Raj, who's just started, can come up on top on such an incredible expo as big as the one in New York. So it was incredible. It really was moving and incredible.
Pardon the interruption. If you like what you hear, if you love what you're hearing, please share the podcast. Please take a screenshot of the podcast, post it on your social media, tag us, just to let everybody else know about Fermented Adventure, the podcast. We'd be grateful for your help to grow our podcast. So talk about the syrup. Talk about the flavor profile. What can people expect when they try the syrup? And talk about some uses of the syrup, because we tried it. We loved it. But it's something like no other that I think that's out there on the market now, as you described it. Won an award for best new product at the show. It's really
hard to explain the flavor because it's like nothing you've ever tried before.
Right.
And that was something that I kept telling people to come taste it. And they would say, oh, no, thank you. And I would tell them, listen, it's like nothing you've ever had before. You owe it to yourself to taste it. I promise you, it's the most different flavor you've ever had in your mouth. And then people would tell me, you're setting a really high bar there, Missy. And I would say, well, I expect to meet that bar. So I would taste it. So the process is we take a certain variety of coffee. In this case, it's called geisha, the coffee variety. And it's a cherry. obviously, like all coffees, we extract the coffee beans out of it, and then we take that husk and we process it in a very particular way, drying it in a particular way, and then boiling it and getting all the extracts out of it and making it into a syrup. And the way I prefer it is I like it mixed with sparkling water, and it becomes kind of like a seltzer mix, like a Italian soda kind of. But it's an incredible flavor. It does not taste like coffee, but it does take like all the sweetness that's in the coffee cherry. Now it'll have traces of caffeine, obviously, because it comes from coffee, but it'll also have, traces of all the good stuff that you already have in coffee, antioxidants and all that. It'll be in the cáscara, and you can you can use it as a sweetener if you make a latte, for example. A lot of people drink vanilla lattes. Now you can make a cáscara latte, so it will sweeten your latte. And add a little sweet flavor to it, the cáscara flavor to it. You could use it just to sweeten your coffee. A lot of people like it in cocktails, a little.
That's what we're talking about. I mean, the bartenders that are hearing this, you could be in a place where you're using a product, and bartenders are always looking for that leg up, right? And something different, something unique, not to mention ready to drink cocktails, ready to enjoy cocktails. If you're looking for a flavor or a sweetener that isn't sugar, right, that, has something different profile, or, that has something that's going to be more characteristic, this is exactly why somebody would want to find this product at meanmug.com, because you are the unique and only brand distributor of this product. So there are so many uses that I think people should be, hearing about this. And you said something where if Evelyn says, try this, you better try it.
It was just so funny to me how I kept telling people, this is like nothing you've ever tasted before. And they were like, I'm 60 years old. I've tried, a few things in life. And I would be like, you've never had anything like this. And sure enough, they would be taken aback, because it's an incredible flavor. And it's using a product that for hundreds of years has been discarded. So the cáscara from coffee is you usually take the two beans out of it, you process the beans, and the cáscara just goes back in the soil. So it's been, to discard it. Now, to be able to use this byproduct to make this incredible syrup is something new. It's something that nobody's doing out there, because it's hard to do. It's hard to find a farm that has the right variety, and a farm that's going to take their time to process it the right way. Most small farmers, will have their coffee. They'll take the beans out and then go out and sell them as quickly as they can, because they need the money to, be able to pay their labor and to prep for the next harvest year, and so not everybody has the time and the patience to put into it to find the right cáscara to process it. And then you have, you need an incredible amount of cáscara, so it's labor intensive for sure. But again, it's very satisfying to be able to use a byproduct that for so many years has been just tossed away, and make it into an incredible product, or incredible syrup in this case, that people can enjoy.
Evelyn, you and your family are such an inspiration. You really are. And you touched a little bit where you said, when you were a youngster, would you expect to be the owner of a coffee company, a farmer in Guatemala, owning a farm and growing coffee and taking byproducts and helping the environment, and also impacting the welfare and other people in Guatemala? But then you come here and you bring people together, and you heal people, and you help them understand each other, and you bring in people that you give them a purpose. You give them an identity. You give them self-respect. You give them happiness and joy. when you get out of bed every day, do you feel how much you inspire people, how much you change their lives?
You know, people always ask me, I don't understand how you're able to do everything that you do, run all the coffee shops, help, my husband with his construction business, yada, 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 yada. And I just, my answer is, I get up every day and I just get as much as I can done. If I think about everything I have to do, I probably would run and crawl back into bed. But I don't know. I have a brother who has cognitive disabilities, and he acquired epilepsy when he was about 8 months old, which is before I was born. His epilepsy went well, not uncured, because obviously it's not curable, but not properly treated while we lived in Guatemala, a third world country. And when we came to the United States in 1976, and my brother started school, and my mom took him to the doctor, and we were constantly in the hospital trying to get his epilepsy under control. And he started special ed in California, which kudos, they did an incredible job in helping us out with his education and with his overall well-being. And I always tell people there is no money in the world that I could ever make or give back to this country for all the goodness that they gave my brother. He would probably be dead if we had stayed in Guatemala. But he's 55 and thriving and married and, just living his best life. And I contribute a lot of that to the healthcare that he received in California and to the help he got, through special ed in Guatemala, Special Olympics. He did everything. And so I've always been extremely thankful for his life and the life he's had here in the United States. And I learned at a very early age that if you can give back, if you can give just a little bit back, why not? If you have, and I tell my kids this, if you have the ability to give back, to be kind, and to help, always choose to do the right thing and give back. God willing, you have a better life than I did growing up in a single parent home with a special needs sibling. But always choose to give a little bit back. You never know, even just with a smile, how you might be making somebody's day. You don't know the story behind everybody that you meet. You don't know if that one smile is going to shed a little sunlight in their day. And sometimes, that's all they needed, was to see somebody smile at them, And so always choose kindness, always choose to help. If you're able, always choose to help. Just do the right thing, because you might be, at best, just making somebody else smile back at you, or even, saving their lives. You don't know. So
you are a blessing, Evelyn. You really are. And these few moments that we've gotten a chance to spend together tonight, I'm very grateful for. You talked about, 5 stores now, and you're opening throughout North Carolina. What's the business plan? What's the future for Mead Mug Coffee Company?
Well, I'll be 55 this year. So
50 more stores.
So at some point, I'll be looking for a retirement spot in my farm in Guatemala. So actually, my daughter is just finishing up her first year in college, and my son is graduating high school this year and starting college in August. And the plan is to grow the business as much as I can for the next 4 years that my kids are finishing up school. And at that point, if they're if they're willing and they're ready. And one of my children seems to have some interest in getting his business degree and coming back and running the shops here in the United States. And if that works out, then he will then take on our business model here in the States, and I will go back and try to grow the farm and be in community with my people in Guatemala a little bit longer, a little more.
It's very interesting how it comes full circle, isn't it?
It's sometimes it's like, somebody please pinch me, because it's just kind of happened organically. If I had set out 20 years ago and wrote a business plan and saying, this is what I'm going to do, it probably, would have failed, but it's just happened organically, completely organically. And it's been an incredible journey, to say the least. It's been an incredible journey.
You mentioned earlier, as we spoke, you teach your employees how to make a great cup of coffee. What is the secret to making a great cup of coffee?
Well, I will tell you, having a little bit of passion for coffee. If you don't have passion for what you're doing, then you're never going to make it right. You're never going to put enough effort into it. So it's kind of like everything in life, right? You put out what you put in. If you put in love and attention and passion, then you will most likely end up with a good product. And not only that, but service. I call them my kids, my employees. Most of them are much, much younger than me. I tell them people have 50 or 60 places where they can stop and get coffee in the morning. They come here for the experience. They come because of the good coffee, but they come because they want to be greeted with a smile. They want you to remember their names. They want you to ask them, how's your day today? They come for the experience. And if you can give them the experience, the coffee will be the icing on the cake. But really, to answer your question, yes, it's the passion of your trade. You have to love what you're doing.
So when you're drinking a cup of coffee, Evelyn, how do you take your coffee?
Well, when I had coffee before I opened my shop, I would load it up with all kinds of sugar and all kinds of creamer. Now, when you're having a good cup of coffee, that's been grown in the right altitude, with the right love, with the right shade, with the right amount of water, and you process it the right way, and you toast it or you roast it the right way, and you make it just right, so you're not adding too much coffee or you're not adding too much water, and you get just the perfect cup of coffee. You don't need to put anything in it, just black, where you can taste the different notes of chocolate or fruity flavors that might be in the variety that you're brewing. Then you really don't need to add anything. It's just good, just like that. Nice black cup of joe.
Evelyn, is there anything we haven't talked about on the podcast? Anything you want people to know about you or Mean Mug Coffee Company?
Well, I just, being an immigrant myself, I just want people to remember that, this country was founded by immigrants, but that story has not changed. I am probably your poster child for a successful immigrant story, but I am not the only one. I'm not the only one. There are so many other immigrants that are currently, running businesses and helping this country grow. And if we just opened our hearts and our souls and remember that we're not just immigrants, we're people just like anybody else. And we're here because we love this country, and we're here because we have a dream just like you, and we want our children to grow and be prosperous just like anybody else. And just open your heart to people that are immigrants in this country. And we've so much to give if we're only allowed the chance. And I've been one of the lucky ones that has been given that chance. And I try to prove every day that I'm worthy of that opportunity, and the opportunities that this country has given me. And, like I said, when I do my roster and I realize, that I have 25 people working for me currently in this country, and that I am creating jobs in this country, it's just, I love it. I feel like I'm fulfilling my duty of giving back for all the opportunities that have been given to me in the United States. So yes, just very thankful for everything.
Well, we can't wait to come down and visit Mean Mug in person and visit your kids and enjoy the experience for ourselves. We got a little taste at the coffee show. I'm grateful for your time tonight, Evelyn. I'm grateful for you sharing your story, for inspiring. Normally, a lot of what we do on the podcast is learning people's stories and enjoying their product and their spirits or their cider or their mead. And in this case, we got to enjoy your love and your passion and your inspiration. So thank you for that this evening. And we appreciate that we're grateful. We're appreciative that you're a friend of Fermented Adventure, and we can't wait to see you again soon.
Thank you so much. And if anybody wants to learn more about us, we're at meanmugcoffeeco.com.
And how about on the socials, like the Instagram and the Facebook?
Yes. Yeah, we're on Instagram, the same tag, Mean Mug Coffee Co. On Instagram and Facebook and all of the social media.
Evelyn, can people find you dancing on TikTok?
Not just yet. I'm a good dancer, though. I just don't know about a TikTok.
You're going to teach me how to salsa, Evelyn. That's what's going to happen. We're going to get some coffee. We're going to get the syrup, and I don't want to mess up pronouncing the name. You can buy that on your website. Remind people again.
Yes, it's the geisha cascara syrup, and you can find it at meanmugcoffeeco.com.
Excellent, Evelyn. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.